aspirin and paracetamol. I think these two drugs are very common to all of us, and if you try to find out, each and every house there will be these two drugs, isn't it? And normally or generally we use it against the fever and the pain. Today we will discuss about the synthesis and the uses of these two drugs. Myself, Tanmay Datta, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, JS College of Engineering, welcome you all in the class of drug synthesis and the remaining part of the corrosion. So, without further delay, let's start the class.
Now come to the point that what factors influencing the corrosion. First of all, the nature and extent of corrosion depend on the metal and the environment. The important factors mainly which affect the corrosion process, these are the first of all nature of the metal, because it depends on metal to metal, because the three types of corrosion are there in presence of acid, dry and wet corrosion, which we discussed in the previous class. So there I think you if you check the previous video, then there you understand that it depends on the like if you think about the protective layer, that all the layers are not protective, isn't it? So if the layer is protective which is formed by the metal, then obviously it will be the further part of the metal, the remaining part of the metal will not corrode further. But if it is the porous, okay, then it will be easily corrode. Then environment is very important, the which chemicals are present, how much moisture present in the atmosphere, okay, all these factors are very important for the corrosion. Third factor is the concentration of electrolyte. This is very important. I discussed in the previous class when we discussed about the electrochemical corrosion or the wet corrosion. I think there you observed that the role of the electrolyte in the corrosion, there is a very important role of the electrolyte in the corrosion process. Temperature is another process. Temperature is another factor which also control the corrosion. Electrode potential, okay, the metal, this is depend on the metal to metal, because when there is an electrochemical corrosion or the in the process of the wet corrosion, then there you understand that electrochemical corrosion means there must be some role of the potential, isn't it? So electrode potential should be the another factor which is very important. And the last factor is the hydrogen over voltage. So this is also important. So these all the factors are important for the controlling the corrosion process. Now come to the point, the types of the corrosion. There are basically 8 types of corrosion which we observed, okay. So first of all, uniform corrosion. I will discuss each and every corrosion, okay, in details, in each and every type of corrosion. So first of all, uniform corrosion, then pitting corrosion, then intergranular and the transgranular corrosion, okay, and then exfoliation corrosion, then stress corrosion, and after stress corrosion there will be crevice corrosion, then galvanic corrosion, and then erosion. So these all are the different types of corrosion, okay. So first of all, we will discuss about the uniform corrosion, okay. So in uniform corrosion, look here, this type of corrosion develops as pits of very small diameter, okay. So this is the part in the order of a micrometer and results in a uniform and continuous decrease in thickness over the entire surface area of the metal. So from the name, I think you understand very well that what is the meaning of uniform corrosion, that uniformly their corrosion occur. So from this point of view, the name of the corrosion is the uniform corrosion, okay. So second is the pitting corrosion. Okay, so I think from the picture you understand a little bit that this localized form of the corrosion, that means in the like the previous, you know, the previous case, there is an uniformly there corrosion occur. Okay, if you see the picture carefully, then you understand that uniformly there corrosion occur. But in case of pitting corrosion, look there such kind of pit occur. Okay, this is not the uniformly corrosion occur, so that's why it is called that this is the localized form of corrosion, is characterized by the formation of irregularly shaped cavities on the surface of the metal. Their diameter and depth depend on several parameters related to the metal, the medium and surface condition. Unlike uniform corrosion, the intensity and the rate of the pitting corrosion can be assessed neither by determining the mass loss nor by measuring released hydrogen. Okay, so not like the process of uniform corrosion, we can't measure in this way. Either the either it is assessed by the determining the mass, how much mass loss, or nor by the measuring the released hydrogen. The number of pits per unit area, the rate of depending, and the probability of pitting. So now here, look here, that in fact these measurements do not make sense because a very deep and isolated pit results only in a small mass loss, whereas a very large number of superficial pits can lead to a larger mass loss. Now come to the third types of corrosion, and this is the transgranular and intergranular corrosion, or maybe intercrystalline corrosion. So look the picture, then it will be more clear to you that within the metal at the level of grain, corrosion may propagate in two different ways. So first of all, it spreads in all direction. Corrosion indifferently affect all the metallurgical constituents. There is no selective corrosion. There is called the transgranular or transcrystalline corrosion because it propagates within the grains. So look at the picture, it will be more clear to you that it spread according to the grain in the all direction. Okay, so another there is then another way. This is the it follows the preferential paths. Corrosion propagates at grains boundaries. Unlike transgranular corrosion, these forms of intercrystalline corrosion consumes only a very small amount of metal, which is why mass loss is not a significant parameter for assessment of this type of corrosion, what we discussed in the previous case also. Now it is not detectable with naked eye because it required a microscopic observation, because this I think in the previous slide the picture that it is very difficult to identify. So that's why it is not detectable which in naked eye, but it requires a microscopic observation, typically at a magnitude of 50. When penetrating into the bulk of the metal, intercrystalline corrosion may lead to a reduction of mechanical properties and even lead to the rupture of components. Okay, so this is very important. So now fourth type, that exfoliation corrosion. Okay, so exfoliation corrosion is a type of selective corrosion that propagates along a large number of planes running parallel to the direction of rolling or extrusion. That means look here the picture, then it will be more clear. So it is according to the plane. okay, the corrosion occur according to the plane. So that's why it propagates along a large number of planes running parallel to the direction. Okay, between these planes are very thin sheets of sound metal that are not attacked but gradually pushed away by the swelling of corrosion products, peeling off like pages in a book. Okay, so it's like peeling off a pages, hence the term exfoliation corrosion. That's why it is called, actually the name is such kind of, that exfoliation corrosion. The metal will soil which results in the spectacular aspect of this form of the corrosion. Now come to the point that what is the stress corrosion. This type of corrosion results from the combined action of a mechanical stress like bending and tension. Okay, is the combined action. Look here the picture, then it will be more clear. It is the combined action of the bending and the tension and a corrosive environment. Each of these parameters alone would not have such a significant effect on the resistance of a metal, or would have no effect at all. So it is in the next type of corrosion is that crevice corrosion. Okay, so what is the crevice corrosion? In case of crevice corrosion, it is localized. It is localized in the actually overlapping. Okay, overlapping zone. It is a overlapping zone, either bolting or welding zones. Okay, under joints and under various deposits. These zones are also called crevice. Okay, this is called actually crevice, and are very tiny and difficult to access for the aqueous liquids that is converting the rest of the readily accessible surfaces. This type of corrosion is also known as the deposit attack. Now galvanic corrosion, when two dissimilar metals are in a direct contact in a conducting liquid, experience shows that one of the two may corrode. Okay, that means when two dissimilar metals are in direct contact. Okay, so this is the two dissimilar metals, and they are in direct contact. So if they are in direct contact, then obviously one will corrode, and this is called the galvanic corrosion. In other metal will not corrode, it may even protect in this way. So that means if there are two metals which are in direct contact, so there one metal will be, obviously it will corrode, but another metal protected. Okay, so this is called actually galvanic corrosion, and this corrosion is different in its kind and intensity from the one that would occur if they were placed separately in same liquid. Okay, so if they behave differently if we place it in the separately in the same liquid. Okay, so now come to the next type, that unlike the other types of structural corrosion, galvanic corrosion does not depends on the metal structure. You know very well, like structure, temperature, etc., which we discussed also in the class of galvanic corrosion. Galvanic corrosion may occur with any metal as soon as two are contact in a conductive liquid. It works like a battery. Okay, so when they are in contact with each other in a conductive liquid, it works like a battery. The appearance of a galvanic corrosion is very characteristic. It is not dispersed like pitting corrosion, but highly localized in contact zone with the other metal. Now it is the erosion. Okay, so corrosion by erosion. Okay, corrosion by erosion occurs in moving media. This type of corrosion is related to the flow speed of the fluid. That means if there any fluid which is flowing here, then there is a chance of the corrosion. So corrosion by erosion occur in moving media. That means if there is any media which is moving here, then there will be a chance of the erosion. Okay, this type of corrosion related to the flow speed. Okay, so this depends on the flow speed of the fluid. It leads to local local thinning of the metal, which results in scratches, okay, or different kinds of things are there, okay, which are always oriented in the same direction, namely flow of direction. So which it is the direction of the according to the direction. So this is the some pictures of the stress corrosion generally, and here it is the some pictures of the crevice corrosion, okay. So it is the example of the crevice corrosion, real life example, and then this is the example of sub erosion. And another type of corrosion also there, which is the soil corrosion, that means the underground pipes, cables, etc. okay. So these are also corrode actually due to soil corrosion, okay. It is caused due to different types of soil like clay, sand, different oxygen concentration, moisture, pH, etc. So due to this type of things, different area will cause the corrosion, and this looks like this type of corrosion also. So this is called actually soil corrosion, okay. So now microbiological corrosion also there, like that some kinds of bacteria containing sulfur consume oxygen, okay, and cause different type of system which result in corrosion. The corrosion occurs at the portion poor in oxygen concentration, like bacillus, algae, etc. So this type of corrosion also possible. Microbiological biological corrosion, like this type of corrosion also occur, okay. Waterline corrosion, it has been observed that in case of the iron tank half filled with the water, okay, if it is half filled with the water, then the portion of the iron tank just below the water level undergoes corrosion, okay. So this is called the waterline corrosion. It is due to the difference in oxygen concentration. Corroding portion is poor in oxygen and act as anode, okay. So where corrosion occur, this portion is poor of oxygen, okay, and where it is poor of oxygen, it acts as an anode. So this is the type of the it is the poor anodic part. Look here, this is the poor anodic part, and it is actually corroded, okay. Where anodic part which acts as an anode, and this part will always corrode. So this is the part of the anodic part. So this here corrosion occur, and here highly oxygenated cathodic part, okay. And this is the reaction also. By this reaction actually corrosion occur. With this reaction corrosion occur, okay. So this is the example, okay. So where corrosion occur in this way, waterline, this is the examples of the waterline corrosion. Concentration cell corrosion, that if a metal rod is dipped in a electrolyte, the portion dipped in the water is poor in oxygen concentration and works as an anode, and which gets corroded, and the portion above the water acts cathode. Already discussed in these things, which is protected. The system will act as a concentration cell, and chemical reaction of zinc dipped in the water given like this way, the reaction occur. We already discussed these things, that how this act as in or how it participate in the corrosion, okay. So these are where zinc rod dipped into the medium electrolyte, and then or water line actually it acts as an or it participate in the corrosion, and this is called the concentration cell corrosion, okay. Inner granular corrosion, we already discussed about this thing. Galvanic series is very important, okay. Galvanic series help us that to predict that which acts as an anode, and which electrochemical series actually which acts as an anode and which acts as an cathode, okay. So so now come to the point that passivity. What is the passivity? Okay, the process in which a metal exhibits higher corrosion resistance, which we need actually, okay. So passivity is the process by which a metal exhibits higher corrosion resistance. It is called passivity. When a very thin, invisible and highly protected film is formed on the surface of a metal or an alloy, it is called the passivity. Actually, this film is insoluble and non-passive. A metal is passive in a certain environment if it is corrosion rate is very low. For example, low carbon steel does not corrode in concentration HNO3. So that means there are some examples are also there. That means what we need, that there are some metal which are high resistance or which have the high resistance power of the corrosion. Okay, so this process by which we can protect the metals is called the passivity. Okay, come to the point that protective measurement against the corrosion. Okay, so modification of the environment, first of all, to prevent the corrosion from dissolve oxygen from water reduces, that means dissolve oxygen from water, reducing substances like N2H4, Na2SO4 should be used. To prevent corrosion by acid, base like lime should be used. Okay, where we have to protect from acid, then base like substance we have to use. To prevent corrosion by salts, they are removed by using ion exchange resin. Okay, so by this process we can prevent from corrosion by the salt. To prevent corrosion by moisture, okay, removed by using silica gel. So this process we have to use. Okay, that means either if you want to prevent from corrosion from oxygen, then water reducing substances we have to use like N2H4 and Na2SO4. There is a process by, if you want to protect from acid, then base we have to use. If we want to protect from salt, then some ion exchange resin we have to remove the salt by this process. And if we want to protect from moisture, then we have to use the silica gel. And if we to prevent corrosion, we need some kinds of inhibitors. Okay, corrosion inhibitors. What are the corrosion inhibitors? First of all, anode inhibitors, and second one is the cathode inhibitors, like alkalis, okay, like phosphates, chromates, etc., that react with the ions of the anode and produce insoluble precipitates which form protective film on the metal. I already discussed with you, if there is any protective film, then further corrosion will not be possible. And cathodic inhibitor, in acidic solution, the cathodic reaction is like that. The corrosion can be controlled by slowing down by using organic inhibitors. Like there are some organic inhibitors also there, like amines, like mercaptans, like heavy metals, like substituted urea and thiourea, etc., etc. They absorb at the cathodic metal surface and act as a protective layer, the formation of OH minus can be controlled by adding zinc and NiMg. So in this way we can control the corrosion. There some modification of the properties of the metal by alloying. Okay, so we can change the characteristics by alloying, by refining, by annealing, by this process. Okay, it is the heat treatment to remove the residual stress. Due to stress there may be some kinds of corrosion occur. So we have to check all these conditions by which there is a possibility of the corrosion, like protective coating, anodic coating, cathodic coating. So all these things we can do to remove the, or to protect a metal from the corrosion. Okay, there are some kinds of inorganic coating also possible, organic coating also possible. By paint, painting is another way by which we can protect a metal from the corrosion. It is the another way, and then we can use in this way. In there are different way by which we can protect that. Now we will discuss about the aspirin and the paracetamol. These two drugs are so common that each and every house, if you search, then you can find out, then there will be aspirin and the paracetamol. Generally we use these two drugs as the against the fever or pain. So what is the aspirin actually? Aspirin means it is the acetyl salicylic acid. It is a synthetic organic derived from the synthetic organic derivative actually from salicylic acid. And all of you know very well that what is the salicylic acid. Salicylic acid is a natural product which found in bark of the willow tree and was used by the ancient Greeks. Okay, so there is an historical things also involved in this case, that salicylic acid, there is an available in the bark of a tree, and in from the historical times it was used by the Greeks. Okay, and from this salicylic acid we prepared actually the aspirin or acetyl salicylic acid. Okay, so from the name of this is the historical event that German chemist named that is the Felix Hoffmann. Felix Hoffmann is accredited with being the first to synthesize the aspirin in 1897. Whatever aspirin means, it is the compound A aspirin. Okay, so the acetylation A and together with aspirin. What is the name, meaning of the name, whatever. So now we'll move to the synthesis portion of the aspirin. Okay, acetyl salicylic acid. So look there, it is the salicylic acid. Okay, so the reaction that is used, the synthesis is shown that in this way, that an excess of acetic anhydride, this is the formula, or this is the structure of the acetic anhydride. Okay, the excess of acetic anhydride is added to a measured mass of the salicylic acid. Okay, so in this salicylic acid we use the acetic anhydride. Okay, in presence of a catalyst. What is the catalyst? The catalyst is the sulfuric acid. The mixture is heated to form acetyl salicylic acid. This is the acetyl salicylic acid, and acetic acid as a byproduct. Okay, so after the reaction takes place, a water is added to destroy the excess acetic anhydride and cause the product to crystallize. Okay, the aspirin is then collected, purified by the recrystallization, and its melting temperature measured. So this reaction is very, very important. You have to keep in mind. I think users, all of you know very well what is the purpose of using the aspirin, but main thing what you have to keep in mind, that it is the synthesis portion. Okay, so from salicylic acid we can synthesize the aspirin. So salicylic acid, when reacts with acetic anhydride, it produces the acetyl salicylic acid. H2SO4 is used here as a catalyst, and their the acetic acid is used as a byproduct, is produced as a byproduct, and also the water is added to crystallization purpose and to remove the excess of the acetic anhydride. So in this process we can synthesize the aspirin. Now come to the paracetamol. Okay, so paracetamol also very, very common as a painkiller. We use the paracetamol to against the fever. We use the paracetamol also. Okay, so what is the reaction procedure of the paracetamol? Paracetamol is made by reacting 4-aminophenol. Okay, 4-aminophenol with ethanoic anhydride, more commonly called acetic anhydride. Okay, so when the reaction is complete, paracetamol is isolated and the purified. So look there, this is the reaction. Okay, so first of all, that paracetamol is prepared, it is 4-aminophenol. Okay, so with the 4-aminophenol, by reacting with 4-aminophenol and the acetic anhydride, look there, this is the 4-aminophenol. And before the preparation, how we can prepare the 4-aminophenol? So for this purpose we have to take first of all this is the phenol in presence of dilute H2SO4 and NaNO3, then nitro group is attached either ortho position or the para position. And if we take the para isomer, then what happened? NaBH4 after reduction, NaBH4 reduced very well. So after reduction, what happened? NO2 group will be converted to the NH2 group. Okay, so that means amine group, nitro group will be converted to the amine group in presence of NaBH4, because NaBH4 is a reducing agent. And then what happened in presence of acetic anhydride? What is produced? This is the paracetamol. So this reaction is very, very important. You have to keep in mind these two reactions which are included in your syllabus: the synthesis of the aspirin and the synthesis of the paracetamol. These two syntheses are very, very important with their uses. Uses are very common to all of us, so you have to keep in mind. But you have to show the reaction for the paracetamol starting from the here, that means starting from the phenol. Okay, so in presence of phenol, with the phenol in presence of dilute H2SO4 and NaNO3, what happened? Step by step you have to show all the reaction. Okay, so in these two process we can synthesize aspirin and the paracetamol. So that's all for today. Thank you, thanks for watching the class, and meet with you in the next class with a different topic. Goodbye, take care.